Thank you very much, Alice. So Alice is going to put some slides up, and we'll use the slides as a sort of a point of indication so that we can all see where we are, and hopefully that will be helpful to you. But what you will see from the slides is that we're talking about this really quite unique collaboration between Keele University and the College of Legal Practice. We are working together with an in-person and online combined course that's hopefully going to be really, really helpful and practical for you if you decide to go down the route of becoming a solicitor. So thank you for attending today. Well done as well, because this is your opportunity to find out as much as you can from Kathryn and Alice in particular about the College of Legal Practice's approach to teaching. I'm at Keele over the summer. You can always come and find me or send me an email, but to get hold of Kathryn and Alice might be a little bit more difficult. So well done for coming along today, and we're going to try to answer your questions. So firstly, we'll just introduce ourselves so you know who we are. Right, I don't like that picture very much, but there we go. As you can see, it says supervising solicitor. So I am a qualified solicitor. One of the things that I do at Keele, apart from teach, is that I also supervise students who are carrying out legal advice work in our legal advice clinic. So that's why I have to currently have a practicing certificate. Now, we might come back to this later on, so that's why I mention it, because the legal advice clinic is potentially an important asset that you could try to use in your learning and your training, but we'll come back to that. So that's me, Sonja Dale. You can find me in room 13, just down from the law school office, and I will be not taking very much holiday over the summer, so please feel free to send me some emails or messages and we can arrange to chat with further questions that you have about this LLM, because I am the Programme Director for Keele. So what about Alice and Kathryn? Over to you.
Yes, so hi, I'm Alice. I head up the student recruitment and marketing at the College of Legal Practice. So it's myself and our team who help guide students just to think about the SQE assessments and the choices and the course options here at the college. So that's me. Kathryn?
Thanks, Alice. So I'm a programme leader at the College of Legal Practice, and I've been here for 3 years and been involved with the delivery of the SQE preparation courses since the very first SQE exam was run way back 2.5 years ago or so. And prior to that, I was working in higher education, running the LPC. So many of you will know that that is the forerunner to the SQE route. And prior to that, I was in practice for a number of years, practice as a solicitor. Yeah, now I'm all things education and SQE based.
Thank you so much, Alice and Kathryn. So hopefully now you understand who it is that's presenting today's webinar. What, therefore, are we going to be looking at together over the next hour or so? Well, I'm going to start off by talking about what we're doing in overview, and I'm also going to discuss in brief Keele's input into this LLM with SQE Prep. I'm then going to hand over to Alice and Kathryn, who are going to give you a bit more detail on the SQE elements of this master's, thinking about also specifically how they teach you. So it's a really good opportunity to get some first-hand experience at the way that the College of Legal Practice prepares students so well for the exams. As you can see on the slide there, this is all about the SQE, the Solicitor's Qualifying Exam. There are 2 elements to it, and from the slides you can see we're going to be focusing on SQE 1, but the principles of what we're going to talk about will apply just as well to SQE 2. They are different, and I'm sure that Kathryn and Alice will take us through those differences, but the principles of the way that the College of Legal Practice is going to teach you are exactly the same. So it's a really good opportunity to get to see that so that you are absolutely ready for success. So firstly, let's talk about Keele. and the way that the LLM has been set up. So I suppose the first thing to say is that unlike the LPC, when we're dealing with the SQE exams, they are set by an external body, and they are set to take place, these exams, at set points during the year. Now, that means that the College of Legal Practice and Keele, we are constrained by those dates. So perhaps it's worth thinking about the fact that if we draw ourselves a timeline, there are certain points in this timeline that we can't change. So the first thing that's going to happen is there'll be a short induction in September at Keele, and that will make sure that everybody understands what the Masters is about, make sure that you've got your academic mentor, and we've got all of the housekeeping matters dealt with internally at Keele. But actually that won't take really very long. You'll be going straight into SQE1 prep, and that's going to be delivered by the College of Legal Practice. So Alice and Kathryn are going to tell you a bit more about that shortly. But that's going to be taught from September to December. And the reason it's going to be taught then is because in January you have your SQE1 exam. So that 3-month period is going to be probably quite intense for you because we're leading up to this January exam. After that, from January to April, you'll have the opportunity to be taught at Keele. That's going to be in person, on campus teaching. That's going to be 60 credits worth of teaching. So again, you can see that that's going to be quite intense because all 60 credits will take place in that January to April window. Now, what you're going to be taught, there's an element of choice. So we've got 4 key pathways that we think that you'll be able to study. International law, that's going to be taught weekly. So lectures, seminars, independent reading, independent study, taking place on campus every week. Very similar probably to your experience at Keele so far, but January to April. The other 3 areas that we are looking at are employment law, social justice, and social care. Now, those are not weekly teaching plans, but rather block teaching. So coming onto campus for 3 days of intense teaching all day long. Now, exactly what will be taught is dependent upon staff availability, whether staff are on research leave and so on. But those are the taught modules that we're currently looking at. And you will be taught along with other students who are also taking those master's modules. So after that period of teaching, clearly you'll have an assessment. No time, however, to wipe your brow and think, great, I can have a holiday now. No, because then you have to go back to the College of Legal Practice to prepare for SQE2. Now, the SQE2 exam is in July. So the teaching for that, which is going to be online, is going to be April to July, that kind of period, so that you're ready for that July exam. So that's a really intense few months, really intense 9 months that you've got there. But you'll have done 120 credits in that time. After that, you will have your dissertation or your reflective portfolio or your project or your simulated skills assessment or whatever it is that we choose to do for your extended case study or project, which will be a further 60 credits. And we're anticipating that that's going to take you beyond September, which is why we're not advertising this as a 12-month course. And the reason for that is there is so much for you to cover. and we are bound by the dates that are set for these external exams. So once you've finished your SQE2 prep, and then you have the SQE2 exam, I think that's probably a good time there for you to diarise a little bit of holiday before you then start your dissertation or extended study project, which is, of course, the final 60 credits for this master's. So that's the overview of how this particular LLM has been put together. We've got a mixture, as you can see, of academic and practical. We've got a mixture of in-person and also online teaching. We've got some methods of assessment that you will be really quite used to, but others which might be new to you. And those are particularly what the College of Legal Practice is excellent at preparing students for. So I think that's probably a sensible place for me to hand over to Alice and Kathryn to talk us through the College of Legal Practice and their approach to those particular exams.
Thank you, Sonja. So who are the College of Legal Practice? If you haven't heard of us, we are fully accredited. We offer degrees and accredited modules, which is why we have a partnership with Keele University. We're fully online, and we do, as Sonja has mentioned, specialise in the SQE. As Kathryn has said, we've had students take every SQE assessment and supported and prepared them through since 2021. So that's the college. We are virtually based, but we are based in the UK, and we have solicitors who are your supervisors for you on the courses. So the first thing to say is this LLM is designed for those who want to become a solicitor. And if you're unsure about whether becoming a solicitor is for you, before you decide to take this course, you're really welcome to look at our guide. We're not going to talk about what becoming a solicitor is, the typical skills of being a solicitor, but the SQE route to qualification and the typical skills and working days and experiences of solicitors are all covered in this guide from the college. So if you're still thinking that through before you embark on this course, do get yourself out there, speak to solicitors, get some work experience, and think about making that decision before you decide to start studying for the SQE. As Sonja said, it's an intensive course, and you want to make sure that you're ready and thinking about the SQE preparation, the SQE exams as part of this master's course. So there were 4 elements of the SQE. There was the degree, SQE1 and SQE2, and then qualifying work experience. And we will talk a little bit about qualifying work experience, but not too much. The qualifying work experience is the thing that makes it really flexible for you as a student. But if you're looking at studying full-time with Keele, then you'll be looking probably at either having completed your qualifying work experience before you start with Keele, or more likely to be completing your qualifying work experience after you do your SQE1 and SQE2. But there is a huge amount of flexibility in terms of qualifying work experience. So those are 4 elements of the SQE route to qualification. So as you can see from the slide, we're going to focus more on SQE1 for today, because that is where your starting point is. And you can see on the right hand side that we have got those subjects that I highlighted that you'll just need to take a look at and think about. Some of those subjects might be very familiar to you from your law degree, and other subjects you may have studied or you may not, depending on what you've covered. But if you think of those 13 practice areas along the right hand side, you can see that those are all the practice areas that you'll need to study, learn and revise all your legal knowledge to take your SQE1 in January. So the functioning legal knowledge, what that means, that is all about the legal knowledge in those areas. It's called FLK. You may see some abbreviations of FLK1 and FLK2, and those are the 2 exams that you take as part of your SQE1 assessment. So you'll have FLK1 one week, and then you'll have FLK2 the next week. And each of those days quite intense. They are 5 hours of exams. They're split into 2.5-hour exams. But you will basically have a 2-week period of exams where you have 2 full days of exams in that exam period. And as we said, for SQE1, if you are looking at thinking about taking this master's this autumn, then the exam period will be mid-January to late January next year, 2025. So you want to factor that in terms of thinking about the timeframes for your study, your holidays, your commitments across the Christmas period and also into January. In terms of single best answers, we'll come on to that a little bit more. You may also see the SQE one is all about multiple choice questions. It is about finding the best answer across a series of 5 options for each question. And the other thing to say is all the subject areas are all mixed up when you're looking at SQE1 questions. So unfortunately, when you look at a question, you won't know straight away. It won't say at the top, this is a contract question. You're going to have to look at the question, identify the area of law that it relates to, look at the 5 options, and then think about which one is the best option, the best answer for that particular question. The other thing to say is obviously under time conditions. So those sections of exams, that 5-hour exams, does equate to you having really about 1 minute 40 to answer each of those multiple choice questions. So really what you're trying to do as you prepare for SQE1 is you're trying to practice answering those questions to time as you get a little bit later down the course, and really making sure that you can practice and at speed under time conditions and exam conditions, so you're fully ready for that SQE1 exam. There is a separate cost and a separate registration process for the SQE. So that's the other thing to say, is it's very separate to your registration and enrolment at Keele. And what you will need to do is set up an SQE account. We recommend you do that sooner rather than later when you have decided that you're taking the master's course at Keele. So you set up an SQE account. You can also apply for your reasonable adjustments right at the beginning if you feel that you might need any. And you can get updates from the SRA right from the beginning once you set up that SQE account. When you get to the point of booking that assessment, it's all done directly through that SQE account, which is with Kaplan, which is regulated by the Solicitors Regulation Authority, and Kaplan are the provider that provide the exams. So there is a separate price, as you can see, there's a separate price for the exam fees. So again, something just for you to consider is that when you're thinking about the SQE, you're thinking about funding your studies, you also want to think about funding the SQE1 exam and the SQE2 exam, which we'll come on to as well, but they're a separate process. Okay. So we haven't gone into detail about SQE2 because the focus tends to be very much on SQE1. So just looking at a multiple choice question, this is one example of a question. You might be familiar with them, you might not, where you read the question, you then get asked a particular question and you've got 5 plausible answers to have a think about. So just let people have a little look at that and see whether they might be able to guess the right answer. Oh, Sonja, maybe, I don't know what you think, Sonja, in terms of the right answer, put you on the spot.
Thanks, Alice, that's smashing. Let me just have a look.
While Sonja's reading, if I can just say here, so this is typically set out like an SQE1 question is. So we have what's called the STEM, which is the detail at the top, which sets out the scenario for the question. So all the information that you need to answer this question is contained within that STEM, apart from the knowledge of legal principles, which will be in your minds by the time you come to attempt one of these questions. So after the STEM, you have a direct, simple question, is there a binding contract? And then you have 5 options, and those 5 options are all plausible. Your job is to narrow them down to select the one that is the best answer. So you might find yourself thinking, there's more than one right answer here, and you'd be right about that. But one of those answers will be better than all of the others. And the skill in the SQE exam is developing a technique which enables you to spot the best answer of the scenarios that are available to you. So you have to be very much focused on what's in the STEM, what the principle is that applies to the STEM, principle or principles, and then work on this ability to select the answer that is the best answer in out of all the 5 options.
Thank you. What do you think, Sonja?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'm going to say is I've done a lot of these exams myself recently. I can say I didn't get through one of the exams because I'm trying to become a judge. So those are multiple choice exams as well, and they're really tough, these questions. So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking this is a question about consideration, really. So it's not about whether or not the dog's going to be given a good home. So if it's about consideration, well, I know that consideration, it's sufficiency, not adequacy, which is key. So it's obviously nothing to do with past consideration, I'm thinking to myself. So I think the answer is probably C. Am I right, Alice?
There you go.
Phew.
Nothing like being put on the spot.
And what you heard there is Sonja's thinking out loud in terms of, I've read the scenario, I've identified what we're talking about here. This question is aimed at the idea of consideration. What do I know about consideration? And as Sonja said, it's about sufficiency, not adequacy. That enabled her to drill down and select C as the best answer. So that's very representative of what you will find in the SQE exam, and therefore very representative of what we're aiming to skill you up to do when we deliver at the SQE preparation course to you. And I think we're going to move to have a look at that now.
We are. So over to you, Kathryn.
Lovely, thanks, Alice. And I'm going to share my screen. So just bear with me while I get set up for the screen share. Okay. And what you can see now is our SQE preparation course in a template form. So the SQE preparation course is called the Solicitor's Legal Knowledge course. So that's why you see this idea of the Solicitor's Legal Knowledge being the strapline across the top of this page. And we deliver the course through a platform called Canvas, where you navigate down the left-hand side in the blue ribbon. And then once you're in an actual module, so you're in the actual Solicitor's Legal Knowledge module, you navigate via the drop-down menu that you see in writing just to the right of the blue ribbon. It's very intuitive. There are lots of routes to the same destination. You're seeing a slightly extended version of what you would see as a student because I've got tutor view. The key thing about the Solicitor's Legal Knowledge area, Canvas area, is that all the information that you need is contained in this Canvas area. So you will see that the homepage looks quite like the sort of information that you might find in a module handbook. So you get your learning outcomes, you get instructions under getting started about how to navigate Canvas, and then all of this essential information, which is exactly the sort of thing you'd expect to see in a module handbook. So it's all there on Canvas, it's all very transparent. You can look at it whenever you like, however often you wish to do so. And that means that it's all readily accessible to you. You will also find from the homepage that you will have access to a calendar, which helps you orientate for your study. And also at the foot of the homepage are all of the units contained within the SLK, so within the SQE1 prep course. And those units are 13 because it's the 13 practice areas on the SQE1. There's no optionality. You've got to study all of them because all of the subject areas, all of the practice areas are examined in SQE1. And the standard to which you're examined in SQE1 is based on your functioning legal knowledge, as if you are going to be a day one solicitor. And the reason for that is because the SRA, who run the SQE exams, are running gateway exams. They're exams to protect the public, to make sure that people who get through them are competent to practice. So absolutely no optionality. The SRA say you need to know about all of these practice areas before you can practice as a solicitor. So what do? We aim to get you through all of this material in a way that is manageable for you, so that by the time you come to do those SQE exams, you feel competent and ready to take those assessments. So each of these units, which corresponds to a practice area, is set up in Canvas as a module. So if you clicked on modules in the SLK page, it would take you to the SLK modules, which are all 13 practice areas split into subunits. So for example, for contract, you can see that there are 5 subunits. For tort, similarly 5 subunits, and so on and so forth. All of these will look familiar, the early ones: tort, crime, contract, trust, land, because they're all your foundation subjects from your law degree. They're all familiar. So hopefully that will feel like you're revising your knowledge, albeit that you're using it in a very different way. And then further on down this page, there are the units which you're unlikely to have come into contact with, certainly not as compulsory units. Things like dispute resolution, things like criminal practice in terms of the procedure, things like legal services, and also business. So areas that you'll be grafting onto your foundation subjects. And when you study, all of this information is available to you in the Canvas area from the outset. So everything's preloaded. You can dip in and out as you like. But because it's so much that you'll need to cover, we set it up in a way that helps you navigate. And we do that with a calendar. So every week you'll have certain subunits that you need to complete within that week. They're randomized, because you've got to get used to randomization for your SQE exam, because you'll be jumping from one practice area to another in the exam. So we're helping you to do that in order to get you accustomed to that. Each and every subunit is set up in a way that means that there is a methodology that you will work through, so that you become very familiar with getting through each subunit. The methodology works like this. You get an introduction, which tells you your learning outcomes from the subunit. So I've settled on contract and I'm looking at remedies. You'll have audio resources, which will be a podcast or video, fairly short, 5 minutes or so, with a transcript and with a link to the manuals on the particular practice area. So you'll look at the media resource for an overview. You'll then dive into the manual, which is available online and also will be available to you in hard copy. And you can see that that's directed reading specifically into the subunit. So although you'll have the whole manual available to you, you're being directed to look at chapter 1.5, because chapter 1.5 is the chapter on remedies. After you've gone through those resources, you then move on to some activities. Now, these first activities offer you to self-practice, and this is a way of you ensuring that you feel confident about the legal principles. So there are drag and drop activities, which look like this. You can see that it looks a bit like the MCQ, in the sense that there's a scenario, and then there is an answer to the scenario where there's missing information, and you have to drop that information in to make sure that it makes sense and is legally consistent. You can do these activities as often as you wish. The number of them is indicated by the dots at the foot of this activity. You can check the activities when you have done them, and you can then move on to the next. So it's very straightforward, very much a learning tool for you, rather than being on all fours with the SQE exam. It's about you being able to think, do I know the legal principles which would enable me to make sense of this piece of prose in front of me once I've dragged in the relevant options. The other activities that are available for you to practice your knowledge, so again as learning tools, are flashcards. And on the flashcards, you'll see again a scenario followed by a question, but you can see that the question is an open-ended question. And so the idea of these is again enabling you to recall your knowledge and then answer that question before you turn over and look at the answer. Just learning tools, there's a number of flashcards on each subunit, there's 18 in this one. But the goal, of course, is moving towards being able to do MCQ questions. So after you've done those self-practice activities, you would move into multiple choice questions on this particular subunit. So there would be 10 of them typically. And as Alice has mentioned, the aim as you move through the course is to be able to do one question in about 1.5 minutes or 1 minute and 40 seconds. Again, you can see that these subunit multiple choice questions look like that question that was on Alice's slides. So you've got a scenario which contains the information that you need in order to answer the question. You've got the question, you've got 5 options, you select one and you check. I'm just going to show you how it works. I haven't even properly read that. Oh, I've got that right. So, but the important information here in terms of your learning is that you can see that you've got the confirmation that it's correct, but can you see that there is reference to 1.5.2.2? That's where the information, the principle is held in the manual. So whatever answer you give, you will be directed back into the manual at the relevant part so that you can find the principle that would enable you to answer that question. We'll give you lots of guidance on skilling up in this way, but the really important thing for you here is understanding that this methodology of resources followed by self-testing activities followed by multiple choice tests is repeated in every single subunit for every single practice area that you've got in the preparation course. So that becomes really, really familiar for you because what you're doing is you're aiming at mastery learning. I'll just go back here. So that's how the methodology works. I'll just go back here to the menu just to demonstrate to you as well that as you go through, in addition to studying modules, you will also do assignments, which are progress tests really towards getting ready for the SQE exam. And the assignments are all preloaded, but they will only open at relevant points in the module. And you can see that each and every one of these practice assignments, formative assignments, progress tests, is split into part A and part B. And what those do is mirror the split of the practice areas across the SQE exam. So you heard Alice say that SQE1 is 2 papers effectively, FLK 1 and FLK 2. And each of those FLK papers is in 2 parts. So all of these formative assessments mirror that split of the practice areas that you will encounter across FLK1 and FLK2. So all very much aligned to getting ready for your ultimate goal of sitting your SQE1 based on all the practice that you have available to you against the materials that are provided in Canvas, but also with reference to all the guidance that we will give to you as you go through the module in terms of how to use those materials effectively and how to judge your own performance and your own progress as you move through the module so that you're scaling up and have the ability to deal with much more knowledge on a randomized basis, doing questions on a randomized basis as well. So that's how it looks on Canvas. And I think I'm going to stop sharing now, and we can come back to the slides and pick up any questions that you might have at this point before running into the next substantive bit on the slides. Okay, so if we're looking at the preparation modules, then what I've taken you through is the SQE1 prep. So we've talked about it all being online. We've talked about there being lots and lots of materials, activities and scenarios. Our division of 13 practice areas splits out into 118 subunits. So that's not meant to sound alarming. It's meant to illustrate that we are covering off the breadth of material in lots and lots of ways to make you feel confident that if you follow that methodology and mastery learn the principles, you'll be in a position to tackle SQE1. We help you go through that by giving you the calendar, which enables you to plan out your study. We give you surgeries on legal content. So it's a self-learning model, self-study model of delivery, but punctuated with surgeries where you can ask questions about the legal concepts, and also town hall meetings where we give you guidance about getting through the module, how to use the materials, and how to skill up on your MCQs. We'll also give you a number of contact points with a personal tutor, personal supervisor, and that will be the opportunity to have a discussion about how you're progressing and how you're doing on those progression tests that we looked at that are released as you go through the module. And we'll use the data from those progression tests to give you some insight into how ready you are for your SQE exam, which will follow the end of the module and which will take place or the earliest point at which it can take place is January. So that will be very much a dialogue in those personal supervision meetings where you talk about your progress and how you're finding things, and your journey on that will be up and down. We know it's going to be up and down, and we'll support you through that. We've got lots and lots of experience of that because we, as Alice has said, we've supported people through every single SQE exam since the first one in November 2021. So lots of opportunities for practice at SQE styled questions, and everything is geared up to doing it under timed conditions. So we'll do all those practice progress tests are under timed conditions, and you'll have the opportunity to do them again and again and again. SQE2 is a sort of honing in from SQE1, but again, so whereas SQE1 you're being tested on your functioning legal knowledge, SQE2 is taking you into the arena where you use that functioning legal knowledge while you're using solicitor's skills. And those solicitor's skills, we give you lots and lots of practice at performing by Canvas platform, which has learning activities specifically guided towards those practices, again with those support from supervisors, and practice SQE style assessments, which will look and feel very much like the SQE2 assessment stations, in the same way as all the MCQ practice opportunities look and feel like the SQE1 practice opportunities. Okay, Alice, if you can move us on. Okay. So when you are thinking about signing up for this LLM, and when you're thinking about getting ready for the first module, which, as Sonja has explained, is your SQE1 prep, you'll be wanting to think about where you are before you start. So we will be giving you a pre-course study pack, but you can also think about your own knowledge across those foundation areas. So revisiting your contract, your trusts, your tort, etc., to really just get you familiar again with the content of those materials. It will give you a bit of a head start, even though it will be a very different style that you'll be studying on. You'll want to make sure, having seen the volume of content that you're going to study, you'll very much want to make sure that you plan in study time. You've got to have a balance. You'll definitely want to make time for any work that you're doing, spending time with your family and friends, but you need to do this with your eyes open, knowing that you've got an awful lot of content to get through, so you'll need to make time available. And one of the strongest pieces of advice I can give you at the outset is treat it like a working day and work Monday to Friday, and then graft on any other time that you think you might need, and be ready to discuss that with your individual supervisor. Alice has touched on signing up for an SQE account. That doesn't have any obligation for you in terms of any monetary outlay. It simply means you're known to the SRA as a potential candidate, and therefore you get updated information about your route to booking for an SQE exam. So important to look at SRA web pages and think about when you're actually going to sit your SQE. But again, at the start of the SLK module, we'll help you navigate that and to point out to you the kinds of things that you'll be wanting to think about when making those decisions. So that sets you up for starting the module. And over to anyone else now for any questions from anywhere.
Does anyone want to add some questions into the chat bar perhaps? Or you can pop your hand up. I think we can invite you to talk as well if you'd like to speak to us directly.
Whilst students are thinking about that, then I'll ask a question to you, which I get asked less and less, but it still crops up. I've got some students who still have a choice between the LPC and the SQE, and they say to me, Sonja, which one should I do? So I usually have a standard piece of advice for them. Of course, this is all about students doing what's going to be most successful for them. So, Kathryn, I know you've got experience as well with the LPC. Can I ask what advice you would give students who come with that particular question?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in terms of the assessments. So the LPC assessments are they're set by and run by the LPC provider. So they're not centralized. And while they're gateway exams, they're not the final piece of the gateway, because it just takes you through the gate, which enables you to apply for and do a training contract. And if you can't get a training contract, the LPC route won't complete for you. You won't reach the point where you can be qualified as a solicitor. Having said that, the LPC exams, students tend to find them more straightforward. It is certainly the success rate on the LPC route is certainly higher. Most people pass the LPC exams, but as I've already mentioned, that's because they're not the gateway. You're also examined at the level of being an entrant to a training contract, as opposed to being an entrant to the profession as a day one solicitor. So that sounds quite attractive, doesn't it? But the problem is that training contract. If you can't get a training contract, you will never qualify. So if you are thinking that you might want to avoid that particular problem, then the SQE route definitely does that for you. Because if you can pass SQE1 and pass SQE2, then provided you have the requisite 2 years equivalent of work experience, you will be able to register and enroll as a solicitor. You'll be entitled to call yourself as a solicitor. So the barriers are different, the hurdles are different. It's passing the SQE exams that probably are the hurdles in the SQE pathway, as opposed to getting a training contract, which is certainly the hurdle in the LPC pathway. To put that into context, because there's a lot of information about the pass rates on the SQE exams, there are roughly 11,500 people, or traditionally have been, that go through LPC exams a year. Only about 50% of those get training contracts, 52, sometimes some years a bit higher, 50, 60%, there or thereabouts get training contracts. SQE route, the pass rate is about 55%. So you have 3 attempts at it, but the pass rate is about 55% of candidates who sit the SQE1 get through the SQE1. So I suppose that looks mathematically like the same risk of against qualifying. You might not get a training contract if you're one of the unfortunate people who happens to fall within about that sort of 40-45% of people who doesn't get training contracts. You might not pass SQE1 if you're one of the unfortunate 45% or so that doesn't pass SQE1. You've got 3 attempts though at SQE1. If you don't get a training contract, you never get a training contract. So very much a balancing act. And as you say, Sonja, very much about thinking about your own personal circumstances and what's going to be best for you.
That's really helpful, Kathryn. And I think it also helps people to focus on the fact that the SQE is very much within their own power. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but you put the hard work in and you can answer the questions. Whereas a training contract, so much of that is dependent on external factors that you have very little control over from time to time. So that's really helpful bit of advice for students. Alice, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that.
Not to that in particular. We have had a question, and I'm not quite sure which exams it refers to, but a question about whether the exams are done online or in person. So the SQE exams are done in a test centre. They are actually the SQE1 and the SQE2 written exams. They're online in a test centre. You go and sit at a station with a computer in front of you. And then the SQE2 also has an oral element that's very much more about engaging and doing scenarios around client situations. So that's the SQE exam. So you will need to travel to test centres. There are lots in the UK and beyond the UK, should you be not based here. So that's the SQE exams. I guess in terms of the LLM exams and the prep exams, they're different as well.
Yeah, so the LLM exams will be, you'll be examined in exactly the same way as other students on that same module. So it might be an Uber, it might be an essay question, but as you will all know, we've moved away from all sitting in exam halls, writing things out with pens and paper. But the Keele exams will be exactly the same as you're used to, and there'll be things that you either are doing in your own time at home, or you are timed at home in the sense of having an Uber.
And our assessments, Kathryn?
Our assessments are done online in the comfort of your own home or wherever you choose to work, but under timed conditions. And it's worth saying as well that all SQE exams and the preparatory course exams are closed book.
Thank you. Sonja, a question about how many modules there are to choose from in the LLM?
Yeah, so at the moment, I don't have a definitive list, and I'm not going to say we've got X many when in fact we haven't, and that's because of research leave. So the 4 pathways that I highlighted earlier are the pathways that we are looking at: social care, social justice, employment, and international. But exactly how many modules there will be for you to choose from, I cannot say at the moment, and I don't want to give false hope on that. It's something that I'm hoping to get an answer to shortly, but I don't have an answer at the moment.
Thank you. I'll just pop, I'm sure everyone has seen it, I'll pop the link to the master's detail on your website into the chat here.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. That's really helpful, Alice.
Last question, will this talk be available for download afterwards? Yes, certainly. For those that have registered, we will send you a direct email with various resources and the recording and slides, and then we'll also share that with the School of Law for you to share more widely as well. So yes. Okay, any last questions from anyone? Ah, Tarek, let's try this. Did you want to say Tarek? Sorry. No, you may not want to. You may not want to talk, Tarek. Feel free to pop your question in. So you raise your hand. Hi.
Okay, Tarek's put a question in the question and answer.
There we go. Can you do QWE after the SQE? Absolutely, you can, Tarek. And I'll pop the details for our QWE hub, where we've got various articles that will give you all the background to QWE. But yes, you absolutely can do it before, during, or after SQE1 or SQE2. And there's lots and lots of flexibility. And in terms of, for example, law clinics or any kind of work placements or volunteering you might be doing whilst you're at university as well, that may very well be qualifying work experience as well. So yes.
Which is one of the things that we offer at Keele, the legal advice clinic. So if you're carrying out the LLM with SQE Prep, you would be able to join the clinic. And we have 3 different clinics: small claims, commercial, and divorce. And you can get involved with advising clients. So helpful to you in more than one way. Firstly, because it gives you that practical experience of real life randomization. Someone comes to see you and you don't know what they're going to ask you about. It might be a property question, it might be a contract question, who knows? But also the work that you do would count towards your qualifying work experience. So it's a benefit to you in more than one way.
Thank you. Kathryn, I know you need to disappear now, but thank you so much.
I hope it's been useful, and thank you all for coming along. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathryn.
Bye.
Just to add to that, Tarek, in terms of the qualifying work experience, what we would recommend is that you do talk to your supervisor as soon as you start thinking about any kind of volunteering or work placement that might be considered qualifying work experience. So have that conversation with the supervisor there, and also start taking notes of what you're doing, the detail of it. Even agree up in advance who can confirm that qualifying work experience for you. Because what you will need to do at the point of admission or before is submit all details of your qualifying work experience onto the SRO's SQE kind of area. So yeah, it's definitely worth thinking about it now. And any placements that you have, whether that be over the summer or whilst you're studying, it's worth having those conversations and agreeing that it is qualifying work experience that you are doing against the solicitor's competencies, and also agreeing how to capture it so you have a supervisor who can confirm that for you. So yes, you can start getting ahead with that whilst you're studying, or once you've completed SQE1 and or SQE2, hopefully any work experience you get after that, you can also start counting as QWE. Well, thank you. I'll say thank you to everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alice. Obviously, thanks to Kathryn as well. for coming along, but particularly grateful that you came along to talk to the students, because it's such a different type of teaching and a different type of exam that's been really, really helpful. So thank you very much, Alice, as well, and thank you everyone who attended, and your questions, they've been really useful.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody. Goodbye.